Hey, everybody. I know this is weird. Don't think that you're on the wrong channel. No, I did not start my own YouTube channel, as much as you all have asked me for that. I'm a guest interviewer today. So today's kind of a big deal. Mover asked me to do this, and I'm really happy to do it. We have an amazing guest, somebody that I think you're going to really enjoy hearing his story. And we'll talk about the book he just wrote and why you immediately should just stop listening to me for a second, go click it. The link will be down below, and at least have it waiting for you. Because trust me, when we're done with this, you're going to kick yourself for not buying it. So I am going to bring him on now. Retired Rear Admiral, correct?
Yep.
Mike Nasty Manazir, as I know from only two ways, sir and nasty, but we'll try to keep it as formal as possible. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here, Wombat, and thanks to Mover for letting you guest interview me. We'll go back a long way.
It's been too long, for sure. Back when aviation was a little bit different than it is these days, that's for sure. So it's great to have you on. We'll get into how we cross paths in a little bit, but for the people that don't know who you are, first of all, shame on them. But for the people that don't know who you are, give us kind of that 30-second elevator spiel of your backstory, and we'll hit on other parts of it, but just so they could get up to speed.
Hey, thanks. So I'm a retired Navy Admiral, Rear Admiral upper half, so a 2-star. I completed 36 years in the U.S. Navy, retired in 2017, and joined a Fortune 100 aerospace and defense company. While I was in the Navy, I had an opportunity to fly Tomcats, Super Hornets. Got 3,000 hours in Tomcats, culminating in commanding an F-14D squadron, VF-31 Tomcatters out of Oceana. And then after squadron tour and my, third of 5 Pentagon tours, got picked up to Navy nuclear power and went and learned how to boil water a different way with Navy nuclear power, and culminated, I had XO Carl Vinson on 9/11, USS Sacramento, commanded that as a deep draft, which is what the Navy gives you before they give you a capital asset. So in case you bump the deep draft into something, hey, thanks, Captain, for your time. You go from there.
Exactly.
Commanded Nimitz from 2007 to 2009, and made flag officer out of there. Went to the Pentagon, and then came back as a strike group commander, and then ultimately Pentagon for the last 4 years of my career, from June 2013 to May or July of 2017, and I was the OpNev N98 Director of Air Warfare, and then the Director of All Warfare, Deputy CNO for Warfare Capability. The cool thing is, during the Nimitz tour and during the Strike Commander tour, I got to fly Super Hornets as a hobby, and so got about 500 hours in F-18s, E's, and F's, and so was very, very lucky to be able to drive ships and fly airplanes and be able to do that. So a really, really rewarding tour, and spent a lot of time in the Pentagon, a lot of, in that bureaucracy over there. And so a lot of operations, a lot of time in the Pentagon, and it's wonderful to be here.
So for everybody that was on the ship when we were together, and we'll get to that here in a second, how many of those 500 Super Hornet hours they need to know were conducting flybys? Because
probably 497 of them.
As an LSO on that ship, there is nothing I enjoyed more than just watching you treat one of VFA 41's 5 wets like it was your own personal rental car. It was amazing. It was interesting. Obviously, I have nowhere near the career, nowhere near the experience. I wasn't even a fighter pilot at the time. It was still a dream of mine. But to watch even you progress in that time, from when you first came on and were flying the Super Hornet till the end, where you got it good, and you probably, I'd imagine, maybe not as comfortable as in the Tomcat, but you definitely came into your own flying that thing around too. Because I remember a few shit hot breaks initially that might not have worked out as well as you wanted them to, until you figured out the differences of a fly-by-wire. So no, that's good. Those fun times.
It's really funny, and maybe we can talk about the differences of a fly-by-wire airplane later on. That was quite the experience. You guys grinning at me when I screwed that one up. But I used to come back from those flights as the captain of Nimitz, and as a strike commander, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and Tower 102. Go ahead, 102. Request a flyby. Approved, sir. And then the first one, request one more. Sir, the airspace is yours. Just tell us when you want to land.
It was awesome. It really was. And so I'll kind of give the background on that. So our career paths crossed when you took over the Nimitz. So I was in my Hawkeye squadron, 117 at the time, and you took over as the skipper just prior to I want to say my third deployment. At that point, workups and third deployment for that one, and I was one of the LSOs, one of the team leads. So we definitely got to know each other fairly well. It was very humbling the first time I remember having to read you a pass that wasn't a perfect pass, because I remember the CAG paddles is like, it's your show, you got to read it. And I'm like, well, he's the skipper of the ship. And he's like, your call, man. You make the call on how you read the pass. He goes, but he was a paddles, so he'll respect it. And I couldn't tell if they were messing with me or not. But in hindsight, they weren't. And you were very humble. And that's something that stuck with me from the start to just talking to you now is the fact that it didn't matter. You knew you were in a different element flying the Super Hornet. Hell, I'd never flown that type of aircraft, but you still listened when I would debrief the pass. And that really stuck in my mind, at least, because you could have very easily, and you have worked with plenty of people in your career when the roles were reversed, that they couldn't have cared less what the person that was junior ranking said to them. And so it was really cool. And I've talked to a few people that were on that deployment, and they can't believe that I'm lucky enough to talk to you on this. And I agree with them. So it's been too long, but it's going to be a fun conversation. So with that, there's one story that I just recently heard about your past that I think is worth talking about. You were an LSO in a pretty hair-raising and interesting, notorious landing of an A6 with a partially ejected bombardier. And I'd love to hear kind of the short version of that and what it was like. Because I mean, I've only read about that, obviously, and it was taught to us as a lesson going through LSO school and all that. But what was that like being out there? I mean, surreal.
Yeah. And to actually capture what you just said to me about how humble I was listening to you, and then this pass with the A6 and my experience as a landing signal officer, I really felt my role as a landing signal officer to be one full of responsibility, and I took it seriously, and I really, really enjoyed those pilots who understood the teamwork between an LSO and a pilot. And so it was obvious to me as the captain. I lived in y'all's shoes, and I know what it's like to debrief, senior officers when they kind of come off, like that. And so I respected the authority of the LSO, and I remember you as a team leader, Wombat. You come in and very fair. And I don't think I remember ever thinking that, you guys were wrong. Basically, it's like, yep, that's what I saw. So this pass, and it's humbling and interesting to me that they teach that at the LSO school. I think the nuance they teach the LSO school is there's paddles telling the captain what to do with the ship. But to get into,
you're not wrong, and that was a lesson I took away, in the fact that, ultimately it's the LSO's job of the safe and expeditious recovery of aircraft. And sometimes the captain may not have the background, whether it's fixed wing or as an LSO or something like that. So you're not wrong. Yeah. That is something they talk about.
I didn't think that Captain Ellis didn't have the background, but he didn't see what I saw, and he wasn't thinking what I was thinking. Right. And so it's interesting for your listeners. I'll go back a ways. So when I was in the training command, actually, I ended up meeting John Bug Roach, Commander John Bug Roach, and the reason, and this is in the first part of the book too. And when you look at that, is I disqualified the boat the first time in A4s, and I learned a lot in the disqual. And so those of us that have not qualified the first time, I cherish people who didn't qual the first time, because they've seen failure. They know what bad looks like, right? If you're a top ball flyer the whole time and you've never not been one of those, you don't really see what bad looks like, and especially in the daytime. But anyway, I was exposed to Bug, and then when I got to Miramar and figured out who he was, I just wanted to be Bug. And what he was famous for was just owning the airplane. He would tell you what to do with the stick. He would tell you to push the stick down. He would tell you to pull the stick back. He would tell you to add power, take power off. And he had these great non-standard calls, and I basically just wanted to be that guy. And so Bug was sitting on my shoulder in July of 1991. I was the senior air wing LSO, so the CAG LSO on the USS Abraham Lincoln. It was her maiden cruise. my second cruise as a CAG paddles, and we'd taken Enterprise around the world, and then we went back out again on the Lincoln. So we were a little ways to the east of Singapore, hot day as it is in South China Sea, and it was about 1700, so the end of the day. And we had just finished the recovery, just finished debriefing. Everybody in the ready rooms had gone up forward, and all of a sudden over the 1MC, emergency pull forward, CAG paddles to the platform, over the 1MC, and CAG paddles to the platform was off over the 1MC, usually caught not ready to go or something, but emergency pull forward wasn't. So it was a little, and there was an edge in the voice. It's kind of, man, okay, that's interesting, and I can feel the ship is starting to turn. So I come up the bow, right there forward about where Cat 1 was. Had a little peanut butter sandwich and a glass of bug juice. Put the glass down, threw the sandwich overboard, and then started running back to the forewire. I met the air bosun back there, and he says, "Hey, paddle, ship's in a huge turn. I mean, we're on the turn. The tractors are getting the airplanes, and we're about the forewire, and he leans in and talks to my ear, and he says, we've had a partial ejection at A6." And I go, okay. And I'm thinking, all right, the BN's gone, the canopy's gone, the pilot's still in there, and he's probably going to have a hearing problem, because he's flying a convertible, right?
Sure.
And then he talks on the rat for a minute, his microwave radio set connected with the tower, and he flips the mic up and he says, "The BN's still with the airplane, his feet are in the cockpit." I'm like, whoa. And so that'll get your attention. So I go
that
racing
changes
over.
Some things.
Yeah,
for sure.
I go racing over the LSO platform, and I go over there, and there's a young LSO trainee jumping up and down, EA6B guy. He's jumping up and down, going, "Nasty, nasty! Oh my God, thank God you're here!" He said, "Everybody from the admiral and the captain on down has called me and asked if I can wave the airplane." And he's like, "No, I can't wave the airplane." And so anyway, I go, "Good." And he goes, "You want me to back you up?" And I said, No, just stand over there and just stare at the foul deck, green deck light and tell me whether it goes foul or not once it goes clear." And so I took the pickle and the microphone, the handset, and for the listeners, the pickle is the button that you click to wave off people where the wave off lights will go on red. And I walked out about 10 feet or 12, 15 feet in the landing area, and I start looking over at where this airplane was coming in, and it was coming over from my right-hand side, kind of angling. And you can see the wake of the ship is this big curve as we were about, 120 degrees through this planned 180 degree turn, as the ship is going from the downwind back into the wind to get the winds right to land the airplane, which is why they're in the big turn, right? So I start looking at the airplane. He's angling over to make it the center line, and he's just winging the whole thing. I mean, he's on tower, and nobody's giving him any vectors, so he's coming over. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at the ship, and I'm looking at the flags and the wind, and I sort of look at him again. And right as he starts to get to the wake, I kind of lip lock him, and there's Keith Gallagher's, the BN, has got a wonderful website, lists all this stuff, and there's a little audio of me starting to talk to the airplane and the tower talking to Mark Baden, the pilot, is angling the thing over, and I can see the top of the airplane's got like a block on. It's like there's something on top of the airplane. Can't quite tell what it is. As he gets a little closer, starts to cross the wake, and at about a mile out, I can see it looks like a cross, and the cross is actually Keith Gallagher's. So he's up about halfway out, and the cross is his arms are blown out by the wind thing. He has passed out. So what has happened here is the seat malfunctioned, and when they were doing positive, negative G's to free up a frozen valve in the fuel store, the seat malfunctioned and rode up 18
Grumman
inches.
Aircraft, right?
Yeah,
Grumman.
there you go. Yeah,
troubleshoot it.
Yeah, troubleshoot by pushing on the stick.
Yep.
So he puts on a stick. Seat broke. Little metal thing that retains the seat to the pole that it's on. It rode up 18 inches. Drogue gun fired, blows out the canopy. It goes out. Pulls the main chute out, goes about halfway down. Seat comes out about halfway and then gets pinned back by the parachute and wrapped around the tail. Gallagher starts looking around. This is all after the fact, of course. Gallagher starts looking around, figuring out, my head hurts. What am I doing out here? And goes, oh my gosh, I'm ejected, but not all the way. So he tries to eject. Lower handle doesn't work. So he reaches up, the upper handle, can't find it because of where he is. So he looks up and it rips off his helmet and mask.
Oh.
And so now he's got, 250 knot air going down his face. Yeah. And so he asphyxiates, passed out.
Sure.
And so So Mark starts coming over, and by the time he's trying to catch up to the center line, because we don't land airplanes in a turn, as some of your listeners know.
Sure.
I just start talking to him, looking at the signal flags, and then figuring out as soon as the crosswinds get within what I think is limits, I'll take the airplane. So I tell the captain 3 times to steady up, and in this big God voice, Captain Ellis comes steadying up, and then he did a real good job, steadies up, and then I just lip lock Baden all the way down into the wires, and I wanted to land him before the 1 wire. He wanted to land before the 1 wire, and so we both basically dropped the airplane right before the 1 wire, and the hook it bounces like A6s do.
Yeah,
the hook skips to 1, the 2, and the 3, and I'm yelling attitude about 4 times, and he grabs the 4 on the rollout.
Oh.
And when the airplane crosses the ramp, I can see Keith Gallagher's face kind of looking down at me. His eyes are closed, and I see this bare face. First of all, outside the airplane, you don't ever see an aviator live with a bare face or a bare head unless you're dicking around over Iraq or something, without your mask on or whatever. But anyway, there it is, and I think he's dead. I mean, I just see this face, and I think he's dead right there. And then as he goes by, the orange panel of his parachute was wrapped down the fuselage, and I think that's blood.
Sure.
And so it's just like, oh no, and this feeling, that just awful feeling. So they roll out. I kind of drop everything. Everybody's running to the airplane. Air boss is screaming, get out of there, get out of there. So I just kind of trudged down to the VA-95 ready room and go, man, that sucks. And the skipper goes, yeah, it really does. He's down in medical getting sewn up. And I go, he's alive? He goes, yeah, go down and see him. So I go racing down to medical and get down to medical down there. And Baden's leaning against the door, and I hit him on the shoulder. Hey, man, his eyes are big as saucers. He's kind of sitting there. Keith's laid out on a examining table. He's getting sewn up because when the thing went through the canopy, all these like canopy shards were sticking out of the windscreen area, right?
Yeah.
And so he's a couple of inches from these shards. And so when trapped and he kind of he falls forward, he was held in by the parachute basically, and the risers were holding him back to the tail. So he falls forward, and one of those things catches him right in the armpit there, and it cuts his underarm. So they're sewing him up, and he's all beat up. He's all black and blue, and his eyes are all puffy. And I'm leaning over, looking down at him, and he goes, "Hey, Paddles." I go, hey man, what's up? I mean, oh my God, and he goes, what did you give my pilot for a landing gear? And I said, I gave him old Canderline, of course, because he did what I wanted to do. And he goes, now remember, Keith passed out like at 4,000 feet over. So he has no idea. He's like, bang. Next thing he remembers, he's on deck sitting there.
Sure.
He says to me from the table, no kidding, I'm not making this up. He says, from where I was, he was high all the way.
And that, sir, is why I'm happy that I got these wings, because that is naval aviation in a nutshell. It just is. And I can't tell you how many stories I've heard through my time where you just hear these stories and just the fact that he even cared that what his pilot got. But that's naval aviation, because that's all we have when we're out there, right? Yeah. So and there's a reason I bring this up, and nothing we're going to talk about. People that have seen me on Movers Channel know, it's there. I'm calculated in what I ask, and I didn't ask that just because I wanted to hear the story, although secretly I kind of wanted to hear the story. But one, I want to show who you are, right? Because those types of experiences are not the norm. They're just not. So anybody who's out here and they go, okay, who's this guy Nasty that? All right, great. Wombat's yapping again on Movers Channel. And, oh, great, this guy's got a book. And it's like, well, hold on a second. This isn't just any book. This isn't just, some fly-by-wire guy that is going to talk about leadership. This is legit somebody who spent his life focused, hyper-focused, and is a SME, subject matter expert, as we refer in the military, on this subject of leadership. So when you buy this book, not if, because you're going to buy it. When you buy this book, you're getting it from the source document. This isn't a third person. This isn't somebody in their parents' basement that thinks they know about leadership and comes up with cool catchphrases and all of this. This is somebody who, no kidding, has been there, done that, has led and brought people to and from combat over and over and over again in their career. So that's one of the reasons I bring it up. But here's the other reason, and it goes to the next thing I wanted to talk about. So I did a total, which is going to sound, sorry, I hit the mic. It's going to sound very pathetic compared to your career, but I did a total of 4 deployments in my 20 years, flew the E2, flew the Hornet, 3 in the E2 on the Nimitz, 1 in the Hornet on the Themis, because of you, frankly, and we can get to that a little bit later. But with those 2 very distinct times, the time in CAG 11 in the Nimitz and the time in CAG 9 on the Stennis, the relationship between the air wing and the ship could not have been more different. So to me, the reason I wanted to do a transition, the reason I wanted to, let's be honest, give up time at home, because my short tour was done, right? Picking up a transition, that's your off time. Nope, you're going to go learn how to fly the Hornet and go right back, right? My total short time in between was 7 months in Kingsville, Texas. That was my short tour. So, and I was right back at it. But the reason I was willing to do all that is, 1, because I wanted to fly jets, right? And it's cool. But 2, it's because of the relationship that you and Trim had as the skipper of the ship and the commander of the air group, the air wing. Talk to me about that and why that's so important, because I will tell you, and I won't name names on the flip side, but when I went back as a Hornet guy, that relationship was not there. And I could tell the minute I walked into the air wing. It was night and day different.
Yeah. First of all, I want to start where you started. This book, the 33 stories in the book, that's how they're all just great stories. I mean, the A6 is one of them. And when we set out to do the book, my buddy said, hey, you got homework, come up with 20 stories. And I came up with 45. 45 things in my 36-year career, because I always think about, how to get the best out of a group of people, a team of people. And this all connects, Wombat. So I'm not wandering here, but I don't know why. I've continued to think about how do you lead people? How do you influence people? How do you get them to follow you? How do you know what's important to them? All, it's kind of thing to then go, hey, I'd like you to go with me that way. And so I'd been thinking about this for a long time. And so, the stories in the book, as you've alluded to, there are things that I went through and then I learned something from them. And so we create a leadership lesson out of those things. And it's me. It's how I grew up in the U.S. Navy. And I had a ball. Oh my God. So I went to the Naval Academy from 8th grade. I knew I wanted to fly. I knew I wanted to fly fighters. When I got down to, Pensacola and even before I got into primary, I stuck a sticker of a Tomcat on my helmet. I'm flying those.
Well, just so we're clear, do not do that if you're in flight school today.
Do not do that. I mean, cocky is, I didn't even think about it being cocky. It's just, no, I'm doing that. See this sticker? I mean, I cut out the thing in reflecting tape because you could design your own helmet back then.
As somebody who went on to be a flight instructor, I would have eaten your lunch if you were my student and showed up though.
And what's funny? Nobody did. I mean, nobody really gave me any grief for that thing. I mean, no kidding. And yeah, you're right. I would have too. I'd be like, who do you think you are? Okay, let's take you off a notch. So anyway, I really loved fighter aviation and the whole, at that time in the early 80s, the brotherhood of it, before we had, women flying and all the talent that we have now in our ready rooms. But I loved it. And I was so happy doing it. And I just loved being around everybody. It was like a varsity sport, right? And so those people that are competitive sports in the locker room and on the field, it was just that kind of thing. And so it just fired me up. And so I remember I grew up on nukes. I had my department head cruise was on the Ranger, was the only conventional ship I've had a cruise on. Yeah, that's right. Done a bunch of in and out, stuff with RAG deployments and stuff like that, boat debts. But everything else been nuke. And you know what? All the skippers were angry and they weren't happy. And the ship in the air wing was always, like that. And I was, wow, so after my CO tour and I went into nuclear power and came out the other side, now I'm a nuke, right? But I'm still me. And so I get an opportunity to command Nimitz after I was the XO of the carrier. Had a ball being the XO of Carl Vinson. Just had a ball. I mean, had a great time. Learned how to delegate there. Me and 18 department heads leading the ship, and I realized this stuff's pretty fun. And so I ran around, and palled around the sailors and served food in the galley, and was just kind of passionate and energized. And because in the back of my mind, like, how I'm supposed to help the captain lead 5,000 people that way. How do I do that? And I know that, when I try to follow somebody, I'm really judging whether I like them or not. Do I trust that person? Is it safe being around that person? Can I say anything I want, or do I have to watch my back all the time? That stuff occurs to me, and it occurred to me in all of my leadership roles. And so I was always looking for a way to connect with the people that I led. When I came, and so I learned all the way through the nuclear power pipeline. When I got on board Nimitz and Trim was there, I mean, now you got two peas in a pod. I used to call it children in a captain's clothing. And we loved our roles as CAG and captain, and we loved each other as brothers. And it was very easy that we were going to connect the air wing and the ship. Now, when I showed up at Carl Vinson as my XO ride, Street Chanik, Marty Chanik, who's retired as a 3-star, and he's a legend in F-14 aviation. He was in the Pentagon, and on my way out to XO ride, he said, "Hey, Nasty, you are the air wing's best friend as the XO." And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And he goes, "You're the one that can defend the air wing because you don't want to get into these ship versus air wing things." So we set that tone on the Carl Vinson. It worked well. I had a great connection with the deputy CAGs there who were in the air wing. It was like, "Hey, look, this is what we do." And we talked about general quarters and how they do general quarters. I won't belabor all that, but I built that sort of, partnership there. And so we came on with Trim. Oh my gosh. Great fun. And I knew, and so did he, in the back of his mind, that our positive teamwork, that was going to be contagious. And we were gonna make that go down into the wardroom and the ready rooms. And it's like, okay, this stuff is fun. This high standard, and you are going to be really, really, really good at what you do. Just like, the NFL, the games we saw this weekend. I mean, that standard of excellence you are going to attain, but we're going to have a hell of a good time doing it. And so, it's funny when I used to do the flybys on Nimitz, I'd go by, "Hey, request a flyby," and then the air boss would give me the airspace. So I'd do a flyby and then do a tuck under roll, go around, do another flyby, do a tuck under roll, come back and do another flyby, keep doing that. And Trim.
All for proficiency. Proficiency,
right?
Yeah.
So Trim would, he'd land and he'd call me on the brick, and he knew I was out of the cockpit. Now I'm on the brick, the Sabre radio we carried. He goes, "Hey man, you got a minute?" I go, "Absolutely." So I'd go by his stateroom. He's smoking in the stateroom. Not a lot of smoking.
He's smoking. That's how you would find him.
Yeah, that's how you find him. So he's smoking, and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "you got to quit doing air shows in my airplanes." And I said, "It's my airspace." And he goes, you can't do that." And I go, "Do what?" "I'm just doing flybys." He said, "You can't do the tuck under thing to link them." And I go, "Well, who's going to stop me?" And I go, he says, "I am." And I go, "Yeah, but I own the airspace. And if I don't let you go fly, if I don't give you clear deck to launch, you can't launch your airplanes." And I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll quit linking my flybys together there if you quit smoking on my ship."
And I don't recall you stopping the flybys, linking them together, or him stopping
smoking. So we came to an understanding.
Very much so. And that did, you mentioned, your goal was to have that trickle down, as a mid-tour lieutenant. It did, because that exact conversation, my JO buddies and I would joke about that. We would joke that in a room somewhere, Nasty and Trim are having a conversation like, "You can't do that with my damn planes," and you being like, "Well, you can't do that in my airport," and it just going back and forth. And then you walk away and go, "We're going to do whatever we want anyway," and it works because it did. The relationship was something that it was top of any working relationship I've seen with two organizations in my 20 years. Top. And it wasn't even like there was a close second, frankly. I mean, there just wasn't. So it really stuck out to me. And I think it shaped a lot of who I was later on in my career and later on in life. And I mean, even in personal life, just how you do things. So it was very interesting to me.
Wombat, it really is rewarding to me that you say that. And that's the idea. A leader, you want to model that for the people that you work with. And you notice I keep saying work with, and of course you're the leader. You have a positional authority that is readily apparent. You don't have to use that, to lead with. You don't have to be ordering people all the time. You don't have to be angry all the time about what's not working, what is working. Think about the people that you're trying to influence and what they think about your leadership. If you always turn it on yourself and say, how am I going to effectively lead these people? But the attitude of like, no, this is a good time. Again, that varsity team. We all like being on the same team together. So let's act like it and do, continue to support each other on the web and have that attitude, so that it's just fun to be there. And particularly when you're on deployed. I mean, good grief. It's already bad enough. I mean, what are you going to do?
It's the Wild West out there. You might as well have some fun with it. There's no rules
exactly.
until you screw up too bad. And then
until you screw up too bad. Yeah. I mean, there are rules. You just bust your ass and kill yourself.
Yeah. Then you go sit at the STO desk for a little while and think about what you've done. But that's a good segue. So at this point, I want to segue to the leadership more so, but I want the listeners to understand our relationship one step further. So tonight, and people that follow me and they know I'm a romantic at heart. I think about all this stuff. Everything happens for a reason. But I'm having dinner with my wife and son and new daughter and dog, and we're all just sitting there before I'm going to come on here and interview with you. And my wife looks at me and she goes, "What's wrong?" And I go, "What do you mean? There's nothing wrong." And she goes, "Are you nervous?" And I go, "Nervous about what?" And she goes, "Doing this interview. You don't interview people, Mover's giving you that opportunity." And I go, "I'm not nervous." I go, "I'm taking stock in this relationship." And she goes, "What do you mean relationship?" I go, "None of this, what I'm sitting in front of right now, exists without you. And this is what's important for me that the listeners understand. When I applied for that transition, there were 3 letters of recommendation. My skipper, which is a requirement, the CAG, trim, and you. And that's in my opinion, the only reason that set me apart is to have those 3 letters of recommendation, which then put this whole catalyst of events going through of going to 106, but ending up in Lemoore and meeting my wife and starting this family and all this stuff. Like, it doesn't exist. The life I have right now doesn't exist. And it's important to take, at least in my opinion, 2 minutes away from this interview. Go buy his book. I'm going to plug it as much as I can. But 2 minutes away from that, because it's important, I think, as much as we segue into leadership, is the feedback loop, right? We always talk about that. And that's the impact that you had personally on me. And I guarantee you, I'm not the only one. The comments will show. People will come out of the woodwork. I know they're going to be like, "Oh my God, it's nasty. You affected me this way," from the highest to lowest ranks. But I can have the opportunity as the person who you have to listen to while I talk to say thank you. Because if it wasn't for you, my daughter would not be here. My son wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be married. And that truly is the full circle of taking care of your people and seeing something in somebody and honestly sticking your neck out. Because let's be honest, some random E2 guy going to fly Hornets is not a normal transition. So I do appreciate that. But it's my segue to my next point, because this is the number one question that I've always heard, and I said I wouldn't ask you, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Are leaders born or are they made, in your opinion?
Yeah, leaders are made. Thought about this a lot. And, people, I have stood on the shoulders of those who led me, and I took, everything about leadership is plagiarism. I stole everything that I think about in everybody's. There's nothing new under the sun about leading people or influencing people. It's pretty old, and another leadership book cliche, but actually, if we had more leaders who led from the heart, who saw the potential in somebody and dragged it out of them, who saw the future in somebody and said, "No, you can go do this." I mean, I got shoved through I got kicked through the nuclear power pipeline door. I did not want to go. And so mentors in my life, influenced me to go to different directions, were kind of nice about it. And others, were not nice about it, said, "You need to go do this." And I went and did that. But, there are people that are born with innate traits, or people who are born with a higher level of empathy and the ability to connect with a human, a higher sensitivity to how somebody else is feeling. And that sets the stage for, learning the skills and practicing the skills along the way that work for leadership. That's why I say leaders are made. You have I have a certain set of characteristics that I use when I when I just walk around and do things, right? And you have a certain set. Your wife has a certain set. And so how you influence people goes with what kind of a person you are. And are you trustworthy? Are you trusting? Do you tend to trust? And so the first foundation of a good leader is trust. And I tend to extend trust early. Some people will not extend trust, and they want you to prove to them you can be trusted before they extend that to you. But I have learned that early extension of trust from a leader, you will get that. You will start to set the conditions for a trusting relationship where ultimately you don't want to disappoint each other. So the team doesn't want to disappoint you as a leader. You don't want to disappoint the team as the leader. But it's this human connection thing. And so I learned things all the way through every single command tour I had. So when I was a commanding officer of VF-31, I learned how important it was to learn people's names and to connect with them, because I was embarrassed that somebody that would come up to me and obviously they work for me. There's one skipper, and there's like 300 of them. And then I was embarrassed. It never happened, but I was embarrassed that somebody would come up to me and say, sir, and I didn't know who they were. And so I learned how important it was. And I have come to find that even something as simple as knowing somebody's name and learn how, and you pronounce my last name correctly. So that's cool. I mean,
of course I did. I mean,
well, no, I mean, people don't. And they,
Sure.
Here's, my great friend, Mike Manazir, and okay, well, you actually don't know how to say my name, but there's, some people with very difficult names. And there's a great story in the book about a Petty Officer Ogbagodo from Nigeria when he was on my deep drive, Sacramento. And we went from, he told me his nickname OG, and I said, no, we're going to call you by your full name, blah, 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 blah. But there's a thing with names. When I got to Carl Vinson, I learned the power of delegation, because I can't lead 3,000 people in 18 departments, including a doctor and a dentist, by myself. I could lead a fighter squadron by myself, but I couldn't lead that. So I learned delegation, and I learned that delegation enhanced the trust that somebody has. You show trust, and they go, hey, thanks, Captain, thanks, XO, you let me do my job. And I said, well, yeah, if you didn't do your job, we wouldn't succeed. And so I learned delegation. And when I was the commanding officer of the Nimitz, I learned kind of how to be, sort of that collaborative leader. And I knew, I knew what it meant to be a captain of an aircraft carrier. Pretty big. I mean,
Sure.
Stand back, look at the picture of you, and say, well, there I am, the captain of the aircraft carrier. And if you just label the captain of Nimitz, you get this like, wow, that's the captain. There's a lot of power in being able to translate the captain to, hey, I can go talk to that guy. I can smack him on the shoulder and say, you want to take a picture with me? Yes, sir. Okay, let's go, whatever. And want to have a beer with us, Captain? Yeah, absolutely. And put on, your pants, like everybody else does, and,
Sure.
and be an approachable human being. Therefore, it creates this environment where they're not afraid to tell you something. And so if something bad's going on, and you scare the crap out of everybody because you'll bite their heads off when they say something wrong to you, they're not going to tell you what's going on that's wrong.
Sure.
And so that welcoming sort of persona that hey, I'm the same as you, I just happen to be the captain, that creates a connection at a really comfortable level that people will be able to share with you. And you can create the trust. And it's a high performing organization. The morale is high. People are, it might not be fun being on deployment, but at least, they're like, okay, I know what I'm doing out here. And I like being with that guy right there. And I felt it when I was growing up. There were people I wanted to be like, and I just enjoyed being around them as leaders because they were just cool and they were inclusive. I mean, Rat Willard was the CEO of Abraham Lincoln when I was a commanding officer of VF-31. And when I first went up there to say hi to the captain of the ship, he grabs me by the back of the neck and he's shaking me going, Nasty, it's great to see you. And I'm going, oh, Captain, and it's good to be here. So, I mean, it was just, this fellowship of, connection and stuff that you can create. And I really, that's what I mean. All through the book is this ability to connect from the heart and connect as a human being. And you don't lead with your title. You lead with your own influence, and you work hard on connecting with each person that's in your organization, figure out what makes them tick. That's why, inclusiveness and having a diverse group and being able to respect everybody for their background, their perspective, their origin, their gender, their work ethic and everything, and to bring them all together and say, hey, we are a high performing team, and what do we got to do to get better? I mean, you just keep hammering away on that. And I think that's what Trim and I created along with Pops Batchelder, his deputy CAG, and Lex Luthor, my XO, who picked that up. And in the down and in of the ship and air wing, they created that too. So the hard stuff was getting done, but we all felt like we were teammates.
Yep. 100%. Couldn't have. I mean, I agree. And I agree with your answer on the born versus made as well. That's one that everybody asks it. It's funny to me because, I've heard people ask that, and there's like, well, there's no wrong answer. And it's like, I kind of think there is. I don't think people are born purely to lead. I think you're a fool if you think when you come out of the womb, you have everything that you need in your tool bag to lead people. You may, like you said, you have the characteristics, you have the genetics, you have the upbringing, you have your experiences, but as you grow, you weren't the same leader as a skipper of the Nimitz as I would guess you were as the skipper of your Tomcat squadron. You'd learn things in between there. So,
you're exactly right. I mean, and you reminded me of something. The reason I wrote this book is because I learned so much in doing, and there are specific things that I learned and then did. So to make the leader that I was, and you're right. I look back at my skipper tour and where God, it's a blessing I didn't get fired as a commanding officer of my fighter squadron. What I learned to be a CO in Nimitz and a strike group commander, but I used to when I was strike group commander, I grabbed all the XOs. You never heard about why somebody got fired from their squadron. Their loss in confidence ability to command, right? But you never heard why. And I got them together. And I took away all the mystery and I said, look, I'm going to tell you what I know about some of these firings. It's not going to surprise you. There are things that people get fired for. And so this mystery of, oh my gosh, I've got to walk on eggshells here because I'm going to get fired. No, it's stuff that's predictable. And you just got to be able to behave yourself and make sure you're taking care of your resources and make sure you're not setting a toxic work environment. And the rules on what you can do there, and there's no mystery. But I specifically thought about, I need to help people who might not see, like, how do I lead? What do I do? How do I hold my mouth when I talk? What do I, how do I do that? So that book, Learn How to Lead to Win, is my attempt to show people tactically what I did in each situation and how I learned through each situation that I learned, so that you have something that go, okay, and that guy's experience, this is how he did it.
Sure.
And maybe through a shared perspective, some things that people can take away from that and make themselves better leaders.
Sure. So moving on with that, and you kind of touched on this, but I think it's an important thing, is if you could pick 3 characteristics that make a good leader. And I will be the first to tell you, I know you think there's plenty more than that, and there are, but your top 3, like the top 3 things that if I'm standing in front of you and you're going to have me lead men and women, and I go, I don't have any characteristics of a leader, and you can hand me 3 gifts, what would those 3 gifts be?
Well, first of all, there's only 2 things that a good leader needs to do, just 2: give guidance and remove barriers. That's all. Give guidance and remove barriers. And so when you lead your team, it doesn't matter how big the team is, and you're going to give them guidance, you tell them why you're doing what you want. Does Simon Sinek start with why? So why are we doing this? And so you might have to explain a little bit what you want done, but not how you want it done, right? So why we're doing it, what you want done. I want to go down there and hit that target, and, what questions do you have? How do you want it done? Nope. You guys, over to you guys, get it done. And then remove barriers. And so because of my elevated rank as the boss, or your listeners, if you're a leader of any kind of level, you have an authority as the leader that allows you to attack the barriers that are in front of your team. And so if they come back and go, hey, boss, we're trying to get to that target, but we need like this barrier moved out of the way, that policy or that, that thing, or we need some more money, or we need an extra person, whatever that barrier is. Your job is to go attack that barrier. Those two things. The only two things that a good leader needs to do: give guidance, remove barriers. Now, characteristics: calm, consistent, and confident. Hey, seen this before. We're good. This is, and you give confidence that it's okay. And so you're calm and confident, and they can look to you and go, okay, boss, I think sweating it. We're going to be able to do this. Sense of humor. You gotta have a sense of humor. You got to come on. You got to have a sense of humor about it. Definitely don't take your, I guess, cliche. Don't take yourself, seriously, your job, take your job seriously, not yourself seriously. It's not all about me, oh, come on. It's, that kind of thing, that always a disarming, capability there with your team, approachable. And then the last one is kind of, that ability to trust, and trust not just with the minuscule task, but the crown jewel, the thing you're most worried about. You're trusting your team to take care of it. The one the boss says, if you screw that up, you're fired. The best result you're going to get is to give that task to your team, and you just ask some really good questions about how it's going, on the way. So that's how I would answer your question. And really work hard on being an approachable person and going, hey, I've this is going to be, we'll be able to figure this out. Confidence in the team. You guys will be able to figure this out. We're the best team out there, and you're firing up. So hopefully that answered your question.
It did. It also made me think why aviators tend to be good leaders, because a lot of those traits, at least initially, the clear, concise, confident, that's how you fly airplanes too. I mean, it's a lot of times you and I both, have had to fake it over the radio on how confident we are in a given situation. So you get good at it, and that was one of the things I used to teach students, and I'm sure you did too, is sound cool on the radio, man. The minute you let somebody doubt your confidence on the radio, everybody is going to jump into that plane and tell you what to do. So at least
not only that, but you and I did the same thing as an LSO.
Oh, yeah.
Bug roach. It's great down here. The thing's deck's pitching 30 feet up and down. It's stormy. It's dark. There's raining like crazy sideways. It's fine down here. Come on down, land. We'll go to the slider. Piece of cake. Total calm. And when you were on the radio talking to pilots on a really crappy night, or things are going on, or a pilot's not getting aboard, and I did the same thing. I used to kind of kneel down in the landing area and kind of close my eyes, put the headset up, and I picked out my best midnight DJ voice. To talk to somebody who was scared shitless in the cockpit because they don't think they can get aboard and it's really crappy outside. And they've gone up and said, hey, it's fine. This is what you're doing. We'll get through it together. And you exude confidence over the radio. You remember, you get the coming down on, final A and final B. You hear burner. And oh my gosh, it's not so much fun down there. And then if you heard the excited tones of the LSO, that just amped your nervousness up. So you and I both lived a life where you have to exude confidence to keep the team confident.
Yeah. And the worst is taxi lights on. That was the worst. There's no good things that happen on a ship when they're asking you to put your taxi light on. So, no, that's good. So kind of not necessarily my last question, but an important question, because this is more about why we're here, right? I mean, you and I can meet up, we can have beers, and I would love to, and just shoot the shit about everything in the past and what's happened since the last time we saw each other, because it's truly been very interesting stories for both of us on very different ends of the spectrum. I like to look at as kind of the more, which maybe you wouldn't think you would be this way when you were younger, but more of the traditional, like the normal, the path of the Navy. And then mine was kind of the opposite of that, which was going the way that probably shouldn't, and bucking the system and things going wrong and tripping over myself and all that, but still getting to the end goal and being there. But the main reason we're here is the book, right? So I can tell you already. So, and the listeners know this about me because I've been on enough. I don't BS. I've read it. I stayed up way too long. There it is. There'll be plenty of links, plenty of pictures. How does that feel, by the way, as somebody who still remembers when I held Trees in Flight? How does that feel?
Well, it's like a baby, right? And you're being, you're leading the way with Treason Flight, and as an author, this just kind of came to fruition. And the first one showed up at my house. I'm like, my gosh, it's a book.
Now,
And
be honest, you teared up when you opened up that box, didn't you?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
wow.
100%.
Look at that,
100%. So, but that's what we're here for, right? Is the book, and I did read it. The review's already up as soon as Amazon lets it go. It was fantastic. I stayed up way too much in the hospital when I should have been sleeping and doing that, getting through it because I wanted to. And it hooked me. It's one of the common things that I think is funny because you will, and I give you advice, please don't read too many reviews. You'll get great reviews, but there's going to be somebody, right? There's always somebody out there that just has to say something. So don't let that get to you, because you're going to get that 1-star review. Everybody does. It's a rite of passage. If you don't get it, your reviewers are BSing you. But it was a great book. And the thing about it, and I saw a very similar, although very different books, obviously different genres, but a similar thing in mine is a review. A lot of people would say is they picked it up and couldn't put it down, could not, and a lot of people have read it cover to cover. And that's how it was with yours. I mean, it was no kidding. I picked that book up and I was like, I'll read a little bit. I got a baby coming. I got other stuff to do. I know Nasty. I don't need to read all of the stories. And then I was like, one more chapter. And like, by the time I'm bleary eyed and my wife's like, can you please just get some sleep? And I'm like, it's fine. Just one more chapter. So it was fantastic. But this question is important. And it's funny. I'm going to bring up a name that I know you're going to remember. Maybe not as much as myself, but my counterpart, who Seep was his call sign in the E2 squadron. We were notoriously for getting in trouble and creating your job to be a little bit harder. He found out that I was going to talk to you, and he was in awe. He's like, man, I wish I could just sit down with Nasty and just shoot the shit. Like, my God, how cool is that? And I'm like, I know, I'm completely shocked that I get to. But I go, if you could ask him anything, what would you ask him? Now, he put it a little less eloquently than I'll try to spin it. But here's my take on his question. Does somebody have to be a leader to get something out of your book? Or can they have zero leadership experience and still take something away from reading your book?
I wrote the book for anybody who is seeking to lead or who is in a leadership role. And in the introduction, it even talks about if you're a grandparent trying to influence a grandson, if you are, a teacher at any level trying to influence people in a class, if you are a young high school student who is trying to figure out how to influence her peers, you're a leader. And the introduction starts to go into that. I wrote the book so it would hopefully appeal to everybody. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out who the target audience was. Somebody like you or Seep or Trim or, TAC Air, we were really worried about the fact that nobody would pick up the book if they weren't already a TAC Air pilot or, there's an aircraft carrier on the front and they go, well, I'm not going to learn anything from that book because, it's obviously a military related book. And, there's Nasty, the captain, the admiral. He grew up as a traditional F-14, to F-18 fighter. So there's nothing I can learn here. My hope, we wrote the book to appeal to anybody who is seeking to learn how to lead from the heart, how to lead through human connection. I wrote this book about how you influence people and how you make people feel. When I say influence, not Machiavellian influence, but how you make people feel. And in my experience as a naval officer, all the way through my 36-year career, and then in the 5.5 years since in business, the traits still work. They still work. And so the way that you connect with people means a lot. The way you trust, the way you create a psychologically safe environment, the way you give the impression that you're okay to talk to, that you'll keep confidence, that you're trustworthy, you're not a backstabber, you don't gossip, you don't turn people's opinion on themselves, you don't argue, you listen, you take the input from that person. You do all these things as a human being, and you create this opportunity and it goes right to Maya Angelou's. It's all about, how you made the person feel. And I believe that is the root of good leaders, is how you made the person feel, no matter how you grew up. I just happened to get to this point about human connection and leading from the heart and thinking it's important to learn somebody's name and being inclusive through my experience in the U.S. Navy. And there are 33 stories in the Learn How to Lead to Win that take people through that journey. And as you alluded to, TR, when you open the book, you see there's Mike's story, and hopefully it's compelling enough to turn the page, and you turn the page or turn the chapter. And then when we get to the end of the compelling stories, it's fun stories. It's flying in Top Gun and, ejecting out of a Tomcat and, flying in QB and flying through a gunfire exercise in QB. And of course, Mark Baden and Keith Gallagher's story. And I mean, they're great stories. People want to hear all these stories. And so I have no fear that the stories are not going to keep people's attention. The work we did was to put a compelling leadership lesson at that story and try to explain what it is that caused me to think about leadership, or what I took away from this. Or in the very beginning, followership. How to be a good follower, which leads into being a good leader. And then if you don't get too much from me, well, then right below that, there's a leadership resource, like go talk to John C. Maxwell, or go, Marshall Goldsmith or Simon Sinek, who talks about this same sort of a thing. And again, it goes back to something we already talked about. Is I learned in this experience, this is the lesson I learned, and I want to pass that on and pay it forward to people so that we can have more leaders who lead from their hearts, who think it's important to value everybody, who don't lead with their title, and are more like Trim and I were when we were commanding 5,000 people on that warship, where everybody on there's like, I love being here. I just like being as part of this team. And if you can create that energy and passion in people that go, that time when we were with you guys, epic. And that's, how you do that, how you put that together. I mean, that's what the book's about.
And it really is. I'll be honest with you, because I'm not a dishonest person. I've given you critiques. We've talked about some of the social media stuff, right? You joke about how I'm going to call you a boomer and I'm going to teach you how to use Instagram, but I'm not going to teach you. I actually go to my younger wife and she teaches me. So I'm in the middle. I'm just the middle manager. But when I read your intro, and I mean, this was, okay, here I'm going to do it. I'm cutting into this. And I read the intro. Hey, if you're a grandparent, if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, if you're this, if you're that, my thought, honestly, pure 100% honest, I was like, no, there's no way this book does that. There's no way. That's just some fluffy BS stuff that's put in the intro because that's what has to be there, because the intro is going to be somewhere that you're going to read before you click buy now. And when I finished the book, I was like, son of a bitch, he did it. He did it. Like, you did it throughout the whole thing. You kept that. And I 100% agree that, yes, a grandparent, a parent, a teacher, a high school kid, whether they want to go into the tech industry or fly fighters or do whatever, play sports, it's all there. But when I opened it up, I was like, no, there's no way. So I truly think, to me, as somebody who's gone through the process, and again, a very different genre, a very different type of writing, because for you, people are going to call you out if you're not accurate, right? And there's things they're going to be like, well, my opinion. For me, I just make stuff up. It's awesome. Fiction writing's the best. Like, I don't have to. I mean, I joke with my friends that, Treason Flight was going to be an autobiography for about a paragraph before I realized nobody cares about my story. And then I just made up a bunch of lies and it became a book. So, so it's a very different type of writing, but just the art of writing and the art of getting a message across, I was not in your corner on the intro, because I'm like, there's no way this guy who I look up to as the commanding officer of the ship, the guy who opened up this door to fly fighters, all of this stuff in my career, like, what's a grandmother going to learn from this guy? What's a 12-year-old kid going to learn? And when last page of the book, I'm like, damn it, he did it. Like that, it truly impressed me. So I do think it's something that's worth buying for sure. I have already blasted it all over the place. We'll get to where you can get it. I have one last question, because we're rounding out about an hour, and I don't want to overdo it because we can always come back and do another one of these if Mover will let me, if I haven't screwed it up too bad. But this is important just to me. Forget that we're on the internet. Forget that tons of people are going to see this. I need you to tell me a story that you remember of the greatest flyby you ever saw in your career from a Hawkeye.
Well, you know what that story is.
I have no idea. You were in the Navy 36 years. It could be anything. It could be humor me.
Well, I remember a certain air power demonstration that was taking place on the USS Nimitz. And I remember whenever I watched air power demonstrations, I was always impressed with that the flybys were always too high, too slow, too far away. And so when we were, doing air power demonstrations on the Nimitz, I would give debriefs to people that I think probably washed over the entire air wing. Like that was a little too high, a little too slow, and a little too far away. And knowing they'd come a little bit closer, but probably not, not get in trouble because they knew it was the captain that was watching. And this particular E2 flyby, as part of an air power demonstration practice, I think the wingtip was actually below the flight deck, which is 60 feet. The altimeter's up in the cockpit, so it's probably 100, maybe 100 feet.
Plus.
And I think the pretty good judgment of the space between the airplane and the ship, because the Belknap pole was sitting. That's the pole right in front of the bridge on an aircraft carrier. You miss that. So, okay, that's pretty good right there. And otherwise pretty nice clearance. And the speed of it was something approaching, I think, what usually jet aircraft do. And so I think the operative question was what is red line on an E2? And suitably noted through, an answer that was in accordance with NATOPS. But it was probably the best flyby I ever seen in an E2. And that guy eventually went on to be an F-18 pilot who I recommended with a letter of recommendation because that's pretty dang hard to fly an E2. I tried it once in the FCLP pattern, and there's too much monkey skill required to move that airplane around with feet and hands and everything else. But
it's a big plane.
I know from flying big Tomcats how hard it is to make a big airplane look just absolutely gorgeous. And the cool thing about an E2 is it's just got this big wingspan. Of course, that big dome on the top, but it's boom, and that was the best flyby I ever seen in an E2. That's pretty cool, brother.
I'll take that. You may have made me come up to the bridge after that one, but it was worth it. It was worth all.
That was just to ask you what the red line of an E2 was, but just to make sure you knew that the captain was watching.
What's funny about this is the first time I told the story about that flyby, I guarantee you somebody's like, he made that up. There's no way. And then to have you here to tell it, that it was no kidding, that stupid, that dumb, that fast. That was not stupid, dumb. Yes, fast.
Because you know what? Part of that varsity sport atmosphere around the carrier is we are really good at what we do. We are really good at flying our airplanes to the limits, and naval aviators fly at sea aboard aircraft carriers, and you know what your limits are, and we fly to the limits of our airplanes. And to be able to do it around an aircraft carrier, you can demonstrate the limits of those airplanes. And I loved doing that. And I wanted to see people fly the airplanes to the limits of the airplane, the limits of the rules. Didn't press. We all knew where we were. Trim and I would keep people safe. We didn't have any mishaps. Nothing happened to us. Nobody got down and was like, okay, now you come up and talk to me about something that's gone wrong. It was making sure that we did it professionally and well. And we had a pride in the way that we did that. I mean, I watched Smith, somebody caught a one-handed catch last night on one of the playoffs on the end zone. Okay, that's how we flew. That's the one-handed catch for either the touchdown or the long pass or the helmet catch or something. Yeah. I mean, that's to me what it was like. And I loved professional flying around the carrier, especially when it was a cut above. Shit-odd breaks. Coming in to do those and being able to do them, and we probably don't have time for my screw up in the.
We're gonna get back another recording on that one.
So. Another recording on that one, yeah. Stupid, nasty screw ups, but but the ability to fly that airplane is just like a varsity sport, and you're good at it, and you see people that were good at it. Your ability to fly that E2 in a sort of a non-standard, but the edge of the capability of the airplane, that's what we value around the ready rooms and the air wing. That's what gives us the Olympic level swagger that we have. That's why we're that good. And so I appreciated the talent that was in our air wing, and I appreciated when it was demonstrated, around the ship. And so that's why I say, come on up and talk to me about the red line of the E2. Just make sure we're all clear. But that was freaking cool. So
it was really humid that day. That's why there was so many babes. It was really humid. But no, and to be able to foster an environment where, we as the lieutenants, the JOs felt comfortable doing that, even though. And you know
what? The last thing I'll tell you, this is what keeps echoing around, Wombat. I'm not kidding. Is people tend now, and they did in the 2000s as well. It's not as fun as it was in the 80s. It's not as fun as when you were a JO. Well, I took that mandate. I'm going to make sure this is fun to be here. And you can come up with all kinds of, Liberty was different and all those kind of things. But if you make it fun to be in an air wing around a ship, it's fun.
Oh, yeah.
If you make it cool, it's cool. And so it's all about the leadership and the atmosphere you generate. And that's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. Okay. So wrapping up, where can people find you? Where are you? Where's the book?
Yeah. So the book is, it is available on Amazon. There's an ebook available, and a hardcover and a soft cover. The Audible book or the audio book I'm editing right now. We'll have it done in a week. I have a website, www.mikemanazir.com, where you can get all the information, and you can also delve into my blog on what I think is important about leadership. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's all kinds of Mike Manazirs, but there's not, Mike Manazir 2 and at Mike Manazir and all those kind of things. But you can definitely find me out there. I'm fairly prolific on LinkedIn. I really like that platform, and we replicate stuff from LinkedIn over to Facebook and Instagram. But anyway, I hope that your listeners will go there and definitely buy the book. And if you like it, leave a review, get other people to buy the book. And there's only one reason. It's not that I want to sell books. I want people to learn to lead from their hearts and to learn to lead by connecting with humans, and don't lead from your title. Lead by, influencing people and trust and delegation and that human heart-to-heart connection.
I agree, 100%. Go get it. Mover's going to link. He'll do all the tech fancy stuff to link all of those things in the comments. It'll be scrolling. He'll make it look beautiful because he's a master at all that. I want to thank Mover for giving me this opportunity. That's what it looks like. Nasty, thank you for taking the time tonight to come on here. I'm still going to hold you to meeting up and having an in-person and hanging out and telling the good stories that maybe the internet, the statute of limitations is not expired on. But it really was a blast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, honestly, because this was really a gift for me more so, which is weird because it's kind of backwards. So thank you for that.
Gift for me. Thanks a lot for doing this. And it's just wonderful to be here with you, Wombat. And thanks to Mover for letting us do this together. It's like we're just chatting in a ready room or in a bar with frosty beverage or a bourbon, telling stories. And yeah, let's get back together and tell stories.
That's coming. Okay. I'm going to sign off now. Everybody, thank you for watching. Mover, thanks again for letting me do this. And we'll do this again soon.